start a new story. This one also has similarities to a very famous fairy tale that you might know, because there's a queen in it who asks for something really awful, actually, but it's also in this famous fairy tale. This story is called Gold Tree and Silver Tree. Gold Tree and Silver Tree, what can they be? Let's find out. Long, long ago in the mists of Scotland, back in time, there was a king, and he was called the King. Nobody called him anything else, he was just the King. And his wife, funnily enough, wasn't called the Queen. She was called Silver Tree. And back in those days, people had names like that, right? Silver Tree was his wife. And she tended to have a kind of a bad side to her. Like, she was a little bit jealous, vain. She was always looking at herself in the mirror and looking at how beautiful she was. But she was okay until the time when they had a baby. And they called this baby Gold Tree. So Silver Tree was a mother. Gold Tree was her own daughter. That makes this fairy tale a little bit different, because normally it's a stepmother, right? But it was the actual mother. And everything was fine for years and years, until Gold Tree grew up and became a young woman. And one thing Silver Tree always used to do, she would go down out of the palace, all the way down through the woods into the glen, which is like a valley, through the trees, and there was a well. People called it the well at the world's end. Sometimes this well was dry and sometimes it was full of water. But for many years it had been suddenly full of water. It had been dry for a long time, then suddenly for no reason it's completely full. It stayed full for a long time. And in that well there lived a fish, a trout. It's about this big. And of course, being a fairy tale, this trout could speak. And this trout knew many things. And the queen would go down there and she would sit at the side of the well and she would say, "Troutie, oh troutie," just like that. "Troutie, oh troutie." And she would look down into the well. The well was almost like a mirror shining back out of the water in the well. And then the little front of the head of the troutie would look out in the front of the fish with his little mouth, its two little glassy eyes looking up. "What is it, Silver Tree? What would you wish to know?" Troutie knew what she wished to know, because she would go down there about once a week. And she would always say the same thing. "Troutie, oh troutie, tell me please, who is the most beautiful woman in the whole wide world?" And Troutie would always answer, "It is you, Silver Tree. You are the most beautiful in the whole wide world." And she would feel all good about herself, because she was very shallow in that way. Oh, just believe that beauty was the main thing, you know. Oh, I'm the most beautiful in the whole wide world, and she would go back to the palace and feel good for a little bit longer. But then, of course, she would start to doubt again, and she would always go back down and she would ask Troutie. Can you guess what's going to happen? I think so. She went down. "Troutie, oh Troutie." Ooh. Troutie came up to the surface. He was looking out. "Yes, oh Queen, what is it you ask of me?" Troutie knew what she was going to ask. "Troutie, oh Troutie, tell me please, who is the most beautiful woman in the whole wide world?" And she stood there like this, exactly like this, just waiting for Troutie to say, "It's you." And Troutie said, "In truth, it used to be you, but now, no longer." And she was like, "What?" "Yes, Silver Tree, your daughter, Gold Tree, is now the most beautiful in the whole wide world." And the Queen looked down at Troutie. "Are you sure?" "Yes, O Silver Tree, it is the truth." And he looked, the glare on her face was so angry, she looked so furious, that Troutie turned around with a flip of his tail. He was down into the deep well at the world's end again. Well, as you can guess, Silver Tree went home in a rage. She threw herself into her bed and pretended to be sick. She was like, "Oh, I feel so sick. Oh." And the king came What is it, my darling? Oh, I'm so sick. Oh. Is there anything that can cure you? I can bring the doctor. Oh, there's only one thing that can cure me, but oh, you won't like it. Oh, anything. There's nothing you could ask for that I would not give you. Oh, are you sure? Oh, you won't like it. Oh, I feel so bad. Yes, name it. Now, if you know another famous fairy tale where this happens, you know what she asks for, and it's awful. It's a terrible thing. But in these old fairy tales, that's what they did. She said, the only thing that will cure me is the heart of Gold Tree. Not only that, she wanted to eat it. Can you imagine? Just like in the other fairy tale that you might have heard of. The king was horrified. I'll do it, he said. Oh, okay. Oh. And as soon as he was gone, she was like, she was only pretending, of course. The king went out. He had no intention of doing this. He knew it was absolutely awful. So he took his huntsman and he sent his huntsman off into the woods, and he hunted, and he got a deer, and they took the heart out of the deer, which was about the same size as a person's, right? And meanwhile, a visiting prince had been in the land from another country, and Gold Tree had already fallen in love with him. So it seemed kind of natural to say to Gold Tree, get on the boat with the prince, get out of here, go to the prince's land, stay there for your own safety. And she reluctantly, I mean, she didn't want to, but she knew she kind of had to, she went on that boat. Meanwhile, the deer's heart was brought to the queen, and she ate it. And suddenly, guess what? She felt fine again. I feel much better now. Great. Which shows you what kind of person she was, right? And then some time passed. In fact, she didn't even bother going down to the well at the World's End for about a year, because she thought, well, the only person who was even nearly as beautiful as me was Gold Tree. Now she's gone, so no point in going to the well. Well, one day she happened to be down there, and she thought, oh, there's the well at the World's End. I'll just go and ask the troutie just to make sure it's still me, right? Most beautiful. So she went, troutie, troutie. And the trout came and popped its head out of the top of the well. And she said, oh, troutie, yes, oh, queen, what is it you want from me? And he knew what it was going to be. What is it I can tell you? Troutie, oh, troutie, tell me true. Who is the most beautiful woman in the whole wide world? And the troutie said, oh, great Silver Tree, it was once you, but your own daughter Gold Tree is now the most beautiful in the whole wide world. And the Silver Tree's like, what? But this can't be. Gold Tree is no more. Oh yes, oh Silver Tree. She lives far across the ocean in another land with a prince, where she is, living happily to this day, more beautiful than you. The queen had such a red face, and her eyes were turning dark with rage, that fish flipped over with a flip of his tail. He shot down into the bottom of the well, and the queen ran back to the castle. And she said to the king, oh, I would like to get the boat ready and go across the ocean to visit our daughter, Gold Tree. And at that he knew that she knew. He knew she knew. And she knew that he knew that she knew, but she didn't say anything. He just got the boat ready. And she got into the boat and stood at the front like this. And the boat sailed away from the quayside, heading off over the sea to where the prince lived with the Gold Tree. And that's the very first part of the Scottish fairy tale of Gold Tree and Silver Tree. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll tell you the second part of it tomorrow, okay? Bye now.